We are not licensed professionals. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are meant to share our experiences and not to diagnose or as a form of treatment. If you or anyone you know is currently suffering, respectfully encourage them to seek help from a licensed medical professional. The topics discussed in this podcast may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Let's Try It with Wine. Wait, I forgot that. And then
Now try it with wine.
I need to write it down so I have it. Okay. Welcome to Now Try It with Wine. My name is Mary.
I'm Des.
And today's topic is boundaries.
And this time we have wine.
Yeah, we messed up the first time. It didn't even occur to me till after we finished recording that we didn't have wine.
So you might hear us gulping.
Or saying things we wouldn't normally say.
Because we have a little,
what is it, liquid courage going on. So we wanted to talk about boundaries because I think that's one of the first things anyone should talk about when they're moving to try to get their mental health under control. It's not going to be maybe the first thing you try, but I think that the goal should always be to create those boundaries so that you can have a safe space like what we were talking about in the last episode. So you can have these kind of conversations with people about the little hurts that you have and how to change things going forward. Have you had any experience setting boundaries yet, Des?
I guess like family-wise, no, but I have more work-related setting boundaries.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm slowly starting to do the boundary setting with my family members. It didn't go well. In the beginning, it's still not always going well. And I think that's something that we should always preference in these different podcasts that we're talking about topics is we do have some experience with them. And as a warning to people, to me, this is kind of an advanced skill.
I told Mary it's an S tier for the anime lovers out there.
And I had no clue what she was talking about.
Those are like those 100-year quests.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be done. Even when you set the boundaries, holding the line so that they don't get crossed again, that's always going to be a struggle, even when you start setting the boundaries.
Right, because something new is always going to come up.
Yeah, and then especially in our culture, being forward and speaking your mind to your parents or someone who's considered an authority figure is always kind of looked down on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they don't necessarily deserve your respect, you're always supposed to give it because they're family.
Oh, I'm nodding my head right now. I forgot y'all can't see me.
But I think that we have such a respect for elders in our culture. And it's really hard sometimes for them to see that you're being respectful when you're saying things they don't like.
I guess more so in our culture, it's even if they're saying things really mean, you can't say anything back. You just have to smile and nod.
Yeah, and it can be very uncomfortable. Just I think also as a girl in a Latin culture, because it's almost like you're supposed to be pretty, seen, not heard, and not supposed to have opinions or have boundaries, and it's almost seen as being inappropriate, if that makes sense.
You know, you saying that, when I was little, my dad would always tell us children should be seen and not heard. When like anywhere we went, that was like outside the house.
I don't think that was ever said to me, but I think the message was conveyed in other ways. You know, like just kind of subtle threats and things like that.
Oh, nice.
Subtle threats in the ear saying we're going to go to the car.
My mom would give me the ojo.
Right? Something like that. I don't think it was so pointed, but your dad's a very pointed guy, so I can see why that would have occurred at some point.
Yeah. He was very open about things.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about identifying when you need a boundary. There was a really good article on thescienceofpeople.com, and it was titled How to Set Boundaries and 5 Ways to Draw the Line Politely. And when I'm setting boundaries, I want to be sure that I'm being polite with people, but I want to preface that part by saying that you can do all this background work, prepare yourself, rehearse what you're going to say, try to manage your tone, which I think is very important when you're dealing with hostile people, is to make sure you're not triggering with your tone. Because it's like that old saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And I think when you're communicating those boundaries, it can be very triggering for them because they feel like they're being attacked personally when that's not your intention.
Right.
So one thing that my counselor kind of told me to start doing was, if I'm going to have this conversation with somebody, to preface it by saying that this isn't me attacking you. This isn't like starting to try to get ahead, building like a bridge for them to walk over with you, and not necessarily standing in front of it waiting for them to figure out what to do.
So like you said, building the bridge rather than just coming straight up front.
Mm-hmm. To kind of like preface it. So I think a couple of the ones that stuck out to me of the unhealthy boundaries listed in that article was if you feel lower self-esteem and critical inner dialogue. I never understood why the critical inner dialogue was being brought in to the conversation about boundaries, because I'm like, what is my inner thoughts about how I feel about myself have to do with boundaries?
I'm sorry, I was going to grab wine.
Okay, I'll give wine break.
Wine break. Hold on.
That was good.
It's a Moscato. I recommend. I won't tell you who it is. We want to get sponsorships.
They have to beg for it. They have to beg for product placement here.
I can only tell you what it is.
Why would you think that the critical inner dialogue was something that would be associated with boundaries?
I think it's because of how critical you are to yourself. I like that saying, you're your worst critic, because it's true. As much as like if you're trying to set boundaries with a specific person, it really all comes down to how you feel inside. Because they're saying these things to you, and sometimes you can't say anything back, but everything's in your head that you want to say. So again, listen to your inner dialogue and think about it. Is this making me happy, or is this hurting me?
I think my inner dialogue kind of is a reflection of what other people have said to me, if that makes sense. Like, I'm replaying old tapes of other people's hate speech, and I'm repeating it to myself.
Yeah, I can see that. I did that a lot in middle school.
And I kind of, I know when I was doing my degree in psychology, we talked a lot about it being during the private audience, where you did things because you thought everybody was looking at you when no one was looking at you.
Oh, I never thought of that. Can you go more into it?
Well, it was, I think when I was going over it, it was more had to do with, like in your adolescence and middle school age, where they would internalize this private audience to just follow them everywhere, even when they were alone, that somehow they would know. They didn't know who they were, but they would know that they had misbehaved, or would know even in their own mind almost. And I think I have that now because I created that person or that audience with the hate speech that was told to me. So if someone said I was stupid, I would internalize it and repeat it back to myself because I didn't have boundaries with them. So they would talk to me in a certain way, and then I would mirror that in my own mind, even though if that wasn't necessarily true or not.
And again, it comes in with you're your own critic.
Yeah.
Because someone said it, so you're just going to keep repeating it to yourself.
Yeah, and just becoming a mirror image of all the hate that we...
Even though it's not true, by the way.
You know, there was a part in a movie that I just recently saw. It's called Devotion. Have you seen it yet?
No.
It's a war movie. I wouldn't have picked it myself, but my grandfather really wanted to go, so I took him. And there's a scene in the movie, it's not a spoiler or anything. There was a scene in the movie where the main character is standing in a mirror alone in the bathroom, and he's repeating this hate speech, every mean thing he'd ever been called or said to him, back to himself in the mirror. And I find myself doing that a lot in moments of crisis, because I haven't set clear boundaries with people. They've talked to me many times. I think more of my interactions that stick with me are conflict driven. Mm-hmm. So I'm just standing there repeating everything to myself. And then watching someone like physically do it on the screen, that was very like, wow, I do that a lot.
Like an eye-opening moment.
Yeah. And like an understanding of why he was doing it, because like you want to motivate yourself to push through it by reminding yourself of what has been said in the past. And like trying to defeat the monster that you've created of yourself. If that makes sense.
What would be the next thing to do? So again, we've already covered to think about your inner dialogue. What's something that we can help with getting that more on a positive note?
Like changing the way you think about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I've been working with my therapist on it. It's a work in progress for sure.
Hold on. That's in a future episode. That's what she's telling me right now.
Well, I think that I'm starting to get to that point, but I'm not quite there yet. I think a lot of it is about fearing of speaking my truth to people and it being respected. Because I think most of the time people have trouble with boundaries because they're afraid of how the other person is going to react. And I think that's where the people pleasing comes in. Mm-hmm. Do you have that moment where you're like questioning yourself of whether you should say something?
Oh, well, I know I'm a people pleaser. I've come to truth with that. So I think so. I think I'm at that limit sometimes where I have to say no. Does that make sense?
Is there people that you find it easier to say no to than others?
Yeah. My sister, I can tell her no.
Easy. Done.
My dad and my mom, I can't say no.
I'm getting better with my mom about saying no when it's crossing one of my boundaries. It's not even really like she's asking me to do anything bad or anything. It's more like she wants me to come visit her or come see my grandparents, which I do pretty regularly. But I think there's other family obligations that are going on where I feel like I'm obligated to go versus that I really need to be there or not. Like sometimes my relationships aren't there the ways hers are with family members. So I feel like pressured to go because I want to make her look good or I want to be accommodating to her. And so I think I need to get better about recognizing, do I really have time for this or am I just doing this to make her happy?
I think we should play into part 2 is how we were raised. More so you leave or you come when everyone else comes.
Yeah.
Because I do know somebody that told me she does not know when to leave. Like if she's invited somewhere, how do I say I want to go home without sounding mean?
Yeah.
You know? I always tell her, I'm like, just flat out tell me. Because I've done that. My dad was playing the new Modern Warfare at my house. And it was midnight. And I was falling asleep on my couch. And Dad, I want you to leave.
I don't think I've had that situation happen. My mom has definitely kicked me out from when I'm visiting her where she's like, Mary, I'm done. You need to go home. But I didn't get angry over it. I understood, I want the same thing when people come to my house.
Yeah.
So I think we should be aware of other people's boundaries too. I know it's not just about us and our boundaries, but listening for cues that other people are giving us about their boundaries.
Right. I can't remember where I read it, but I saw someone said that these boundaries are set for you because it's for your own personal value system. More so you're making yourself a priority now rather than other people. Again, because at least I see myself as a people pleaser, so I would rather spend the time pleasing somebody than rather staying home and doing something I would actually like to do.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. But I think when my counselor, I think I had talked to you about this before, when she had first approached me about setting boundaries because she saw how overwhelmed I was. She saw how I was stretching myself too thin. Mm-hmm. I was becoming irritable and I was building resentment against the people who were asking me for things all the time. But I wasn't telling anybody this. I was just quietly suffering about it. And when she told me about you need to start setting boundaries and taking care of yourself. As soon as she said taking care of yourself, I cut her off. I was like, no, there's no reason why I need to be putting myself in the middle when someone else is suffering. Because that's how I saw it. I don't want to take away from his pain because I'm tired or her pain because I'm tired. Or I overbooked myself. I did these things to myself. That's my fault. That's not their fault.
So you weren't really canceling on people?
No, I was doing all of it and refusing to not disappoint anybody. I just didn't want to disappoint anybody. Mm-hmm. And the idea of putting a boundary up with somebody, I'm like, they should have, they're my whatever, my brother, my mother, my sister, I'm their daughter, I'm their friend. I shouldn't be putting boundaries on that kind of relationship. We're friends. I should always be there for them. And I don't think that's necessarily true anymore.
I agree. Because I remember my dad telling me, don't put the work in if they're not putting in the work themselves. I mean, if they're not going to push, let's just say you want to hang out with them, if they're not making time for you, why should you make time for them?
Yeah. And you're trying, and then I'm always doing it to try to save them from some kind of pain or my perceived pain of that they're feeling. If they're feeling overwhelmed, well, let me take this off your plate when my plate's already overwhelming. it's always about, it's definitely the people pleaser in me, but it's also the not wanting to cause issues for someone. If they're coming to me, I take it very seriously. Like, and I internalize it. And that was a real struggle for me when I came to setting boundaries for the first time, because I'm internalizing their pain. So it feels like, well, I am taking care of myself because I'm addressing this issue. It was never my issue, but I internalized it and made it my issue. So I felt like I was doing them a disservice if I didn't show up.
I think that also comes back to us being the oldest. And what was that thing you said? The
oranges. Mm-hmm. So when I first started my therapy, and that's definitely a good boundary setting analogy. When I first started going to therapy, my therapist helped me come up with an analogy for describing my mental state. So I felt like I was born and always carrying around a basket full of oranges. And I spent my entire life putting oranges in it, like whether it be relationships, conversations I had with people, trauma, whatever. Good things too. Like, it's not all bad. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm crazy. Like, everything ever in my life was horrible. Like, I don't want that to be what I'm saying here. But I carried a bunch of things with me through my life, like I'm sure everybody does. And then I got to a point where it felt like the basket was crushing me and I couldn't carry it anymore. So my thought process was, I'm going to go to therapy and I'm going to learn how to make a bigger basket so that I can handle more for the people around me. Because managing I feel like I'm
other people's
managing their pain and, you know, trying to be what I thought was a good sister, a good daughter, a good niece, a good cousin. And I wanted to be somebody who I made up in my head. And I was determined to use counseling as a tool to make myself that person. And then when I started going to counseling and kind of sitting down for the first time and looking at my basket and taking a look at the oranges and being like, this one's kind of rotten. Why do you keep carrying it? Or this one looks funny. Like, you don't need to carry it. Or there's some that I picked up that were other people's oranges and they didn't belong in my basket in the first place. And I think that the boundaries definitely make it so that I'm analyzing those oranges as they're coming at me and not just automatically default putting them in the basket, if that makes sense.
Right.
And you said you want to do that with work?
I do. But before that, let's take a wine break.
Okay. And you should, as a listener, should take this as our hint to drink some wine with us.
It's the best tool. Oh, I heard that slurp.
It hits different. It's different every time.
I heard that slurp. Go.
Right?
Do you want ASMR? Is that what y'all want? So, I told Mary that I said it in the beginning, but off recording, I told her that I have more work boundaries rather than family boundaries, only because I call it my first big girl job. I was 18. I was fresh out of high school, and I started working front desk for a medical office. I will still say that I love that job. I was just not happy there, only because I put 200% when I should have been maybe putting 60%. I was doing everything. I was staying overtime, and I never felt appreciated. And when I would ask for a raise, they would tell me it wasn't in the budget or I wasn't doing good enough. So why keep going if you're going to do all this and not get recognition? I didn't even get a pizza party, guys. I just want to put that out there, okay?
Where's my going away cake?
Exactly. Actually, that's a whole nother story. So I left that job because I found something that paid better. Then I worked at a call center. And I hated that job because I found out that when you work somewhere that's a call center, you're just a number. And I was told that I had to make like a certain amount of money for the company each month. So as an example, mine was $15,000. Every month I had to make that much. And if I didn't, I would get fired. And right before I found my current job, I didn't make that. And they told me, well, good thing you found this job because you were going to get fired. My manager I felt like she didn't like me. I think because I was always doing the bare minimum, and she knew that. Yeah. And I don't think she liked that I was putting in quotations again, the bare minimum, aka I was just doing my job. when I came to my current job is when I finally, how my dad says this is, I found my worth. I told them that I applied for this job and I'm only going to do what you told me to do, or what you're telling me in the job description. That's all I'm going to do. I can help you do extra, but if you tell me that my time is 5 o'clock, that I need to leave and clock out, that's when I'm going to leave. I'm not coming in early unless I'm getting paid for it. And I love this job, by the way. And again, I think it's because I set these boundaries that my manager and my supervisor respects me for it.
I understand that, because I was, when I was on this job search for the current job that I'm in, I definitely in the beginning went into the search with the idea that there was things that I wanted and I wasn't going to give up. Like, my work-life balance is very important to me. I know it's just me and Robert, and that's a boundary that I also see a lot with family, that because you don't have kids, some reason you have unlimited resources and unlimited time. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily true, especially not for me, because I have my hands in so many different pots with different family obligations, work obligations. I'm still going to school. So it's not always, I feel like work and family sometimes ask for the same things and don't give you the same return.
Exactly. That's why I was telling you, I think boundaries, you can fit them anywhere. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure about your pets, but I think your pets too.
Well, you don't like it when Louie and Puka follow you to the bathroom.
Okay, if I sit down and he's staring at me while I'm wiping.
Just making sure you don't fall in.
Mary has a dog named Louie, and we call him a bathroom attendant, because if he sees you going the direction of where the bathroom is, he just follows you.
And everybody does. Anyone who's come to my house is like, why does he follow me? Like, her sister runs to the bathroom at my house to try to beat him in there. And she's like, the last time she said magically he appeared behind the toilet.
He's like a magician. You close the door, you're like, oh, I saw him in the hallway, he's gone. And you turn around and he's right there, just looking at you.
He's slippery. But I think there's also relationships, setting boundaries in your own personal relationships that I think is important. And the article that from Science People gives tips and advice on how to do that. So I would recommend to anybody to take a look at that article. We'll make sure to link it in the description box for anyone who wants to take a look at it. There was also, just from doing like our own research, there was kind of a consensus that Des and I came to about people being so encouraging about setting boundaries, but not being realistic about the boundary setting process. I have been trying to set boundaries and they are not always welcomed. And it's more than just a one occasion. Like, multiple people, when I've tried to set boundaries with them, have taken it negatively.
Right. I read on there, when you start setting boundaries, some people will just not understand. Again, you could do everything that Mary said in the beginning, to take the time to tell them, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just trying to make sure that our relationship is better. And they're still going to take it as you're attacking them, and you're too good for them. And at least, like, I'm trying to, like, keep it professional, but you're being extra.
Yeah.
You know?
I've got that a lot more from family than when I try to set work boundaries.
Work-wise, I think I'm okay. That's what I keep saying. I haven't really put up family boundaries, only because my dad's really good at that. I said it in the first podcast, but on my dad's side, I'm just not really close with a lot of people. And the people that I do talk to, when I was younger, my dad set my boundaries, and it's been working.
Yeah. And I think my mom is a little different than your dad. My mom has a lot of, like, really good relationships with a lot of her family. And she kind of wants us to take part in these relationships because they brought her so much joy. So I think her expectation has always been that we be open to those kind of relationships, and which I think is very healthy for you to be open to relationships. But I also think that we're at different stages in our life, so bridging those gaps can be very difficult. And I do tend to get along with people who are older than me most of the time, but I'm still in a different stage in my life. You know, they've already had their kids. They're, looking at retirement, or, making a change in a career and not just a job. Like, there's certain things that they talk about that I would never be able to understand.
I think it could also be, like you said, that age gap. But I've come to notice that sometimes, at least like with the older crowd, if they're older than me, they just automatically assume that they know more than me. I'm not saying just because I'm young, like, I'm not trying to be like a teenager, like, I already know everything. No, it's more so we didn't walk in the same shoes. You might have had a tougher coming up into your career rather than I have, you know, or vice versa. I had it tougher and you had it easier.
A lot of invalidating when you're setting up boundaries, or
Yeah.
like trying to understand. And I think that's my problem too, personally. When people set up boundaries with me, I want to understand where they're coming from. So I'll ask a lot of questions that can be uncomfortable for people, and they don't want to answer those questions. And in reality, they don't need to. Like, I wouldn't like it either if I said no, it's no. Like, why you keep asking me questions?
That's probably when it like starts triggering and they think you're attacking them.
Yeah.
When again, they could have just said, "No, I don't want to talk about that right now," and I'm sure you would have changed the subject. Or
Yeah, sometimes. I have to admit, sometimes when I'm really struggling with something, a boundary or something somebody said, I have the tendency to be like a jackhammer about it. Like, I'm gonna figure this out because I want to understand. But I think I need to be more respectful of, like, they're going through something, respect that, and maybe later on down the line reapproach with a different approach.
But like you said, it's gonna take time. So like you're still learning.
And the one approach that might work on one family member is not going to work on another.
I want to heavily emphasize that everybody's different. You may have said that same thing to 3 people and they were okay with it, but that fourth person may not like it.
And you have to just redesign your approach and come back and try again later. Like, I don't want people to get discouraged, because it's definitely a lot of people are going to be saying no and be very uncomfortable and very unhappy with you when you start laying down your boundaries. I know when I came out to my family and said, when I started school, obviously, like, if anyone's ever gone to college, you get introduced to things that you never would have in a normal family setting. Mm-hmm. And I took a world religion class. I didn't change religions, but I became sour about it, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't like a lot of the rules that were in the religion. I started to question it as I read more into it, because I was almost like, up until that point, I had a very surface level understanding about what it meant to be Catholic. I didn't really understand how hardcore of a line it was about gay people or about unmarried or divorced women.
Heavily.
I didn't realize how biased and how unfair the rules were against people in those groups, and it upset me. And I asked questions, and it's like I approached the Catholics' boundary line where they did not want to explain why those things are bad, or it's in the book, and that was enough of an explanation. And there was an instance where I actually had asked a priest about it, and he got so ugly with me for asking, and like started giving examples with celebrities and saying they were ugly people and they were working with the devil to corrupt the youth, or, you know, whatever. And that was so hard for me, because up to that point, I loved my religion, and I didn't realize how much hate was kind of wrapped into the rhetoric until something hit me. Something was personal to me, because I had many family members who are part of the LGBTQ community. I don't know if I said that right. If I missed a letter, I'm so sorry. It was not intentional.
LGBTQIA+.
Okay, see, I missed the whole little plus. I don't want to be disrespectful. When he told me the things he did, I realized this wasn't the religion for me. And I went on a quest to just verify and validate my feelings. And I talked to a lot of people. I talked to other priests who weren't so hardline against it. And then I talked to my grandfather. He made a comment to me that's kind of stuck with me. Do not be a cafeteria Catholic. You're either in it or you're not. And that really stuck out to me, just because he's right. Like, I don't want to be half in on something, because then if I told anyone, random person, I'm part of the Catholic religion, they're automatically going to come in with those stereotypes of like that I would have an issue with people who are part of the community. And I don't want that to be carried with me just because I'm holding on to something for show, basically. And that was a boundary for me. So I started to communicate that boundary with my family, that I was not going to identify as a member of the Catholic Church anymore. And I got a lot of pushback.
I was going to ask how they took it.
My mother was very upset. by it. It took her time to come around to it, but initially when I told her my decision, she was not happy with it at all. And she didn't want me telling other family members. She actually asked me not to say anything about it.
Before we continue, I'm sure other people have had good things with being Catholic and any other religion. It's just more so again, this is
my personal belief. Whether you agree with it or not, or agree with the lifestyle of someone else and you want to take a hard line against it, that's totally your opinion. I don't think anything less of people who think differently than I do.
Right.
I don't understand it, but I respect it. That's their boundary, that's their hard line. And I just wish that when I had said something to my mom, that would have been the response. And eventually it became the response, which is why I'm saying don't be discouraged by a negative first approach. Eventually, when she kind of sat with it, she realized that she felt the same way I did about some of the topics that were not sitting right with me. And she's still a member of the church, but she still has her, she hasn't lost a part of herself in doing it. And I felt like I would have if I had stayed part of the church, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm Christian, and that's how I was raised. But my dad had a really close relationship with his grandma, and she was with me until I was 13 and she passed away, but she was heavily into the church. But unfortunately, when I would go to church for her, is the same thing with you. That's when I would see the ugliness in church. It was always if you do this, you're going to hell. If you do this, you're going to hell. Even I don't know, I just feel they, at least that church, I feel they brainwashed you. There was multiple instances where I did want to question something, and she would tell me, no, don't ask that question right now. And I think it was more so because she didn't want to be seen different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're part of a community too, and you want to be respectful that they're not being mistreated because of your decisions.
Right. When she passed away, that's when I didn't do my discovering like Mary did. I more so just gave up on it. I still believed in God, but I didn't go to church. I didn't pray like everyone wanted to. Everyone wanted me to. It was just kind of on the back burner until I met my husband, and I call him my Christian boy.
It's gonna save us all.
Yeah. That's when I started getting more into it, and I can say that seen two different ways. I can see that there are some Christians that just, if it's in the book, it's in the book. If you do something differently, you're going to hell. And that, in our opinion, that's not right. I think you should decide that yourself. So when I started going to church with him, that's when I'm not going to say I started liking Jesus again. It's just more so
your relationship changed.
Yeah, I was happy again, and I wasn't scared to do anything differently, or I wasn't scared to ask questions, because this time they would answer them with passion and with I don't know what the word is, love, sincerity.
Yeah, sincerity.
Thank you.
That's our tech guy. Des is sleeping with him, in case you're wondering.
He's my husband. I don't know. It's different now. I like going to church now. And again, it's different for Mary, and that's fine. I'm not going to tell her that she has to come to church or she's going to go to hell or whatever. We're both putting those boundaries with each other, and again with our religion. I like it, but if I decide I don't want to go because I don't want to hear this topic at the moment, I'm not ready to, I'm not going to go to church. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, because I also think it's important for us to challenge our boundaries so that we're open to new experiences. Like what you were saying about how at first you were kind of hardlining against it after the experience with your grandmother and her church. But then when you met Andrew, you were open to trying it again and seeing if that was a better fit. I'm still open to possibly finding a different church or a different religious avenue, because I do want to be more spiritual. I just have to find one that fits with my ideas too. So I want to challenge my boundary, because I was holding religions all to the same point that I was with my Catholic religion. and I wanted to try something a little different.
Yeah. I mean, look at me. It took me, how far is 2013 from? It took me like 7 years before I finally said, okay, I think I'm ready to go back to church. And again, it's because of what I heard.
Yeah.
It was because of how they treated you.
And I think boundaries are meant to protect us, not to close us off. So we should still be open to having new ideas come to us, and maybe looking into things that we had before written off. Because I know that's definitely something I want to do with relationships too. Like, it's not just about the religious aspect, but I think with us as Latina women, religion plays so heavily in our cultural dynamics with each other. And it affects everybody, because most of our like basic cultural practices are based on something religious.
Yeah.
And our different, our roles as men and women are all embedded in the Catholic religion. And a lot of it has to do with just keeping, and then you want to keep those roots for your children, because there are so many benefits to, our lifestyle and the way I run our households. Like how clean you are. I love it when I come over. It always smells so good.
Oh my God.
And I'm sure those are things you want to keep with your children too. And like the sense of family that comes from being a part of a Latin, Mexican, big old functioning unit of everybody coming together all the time. I want that for my children. I want to be able to go to my brother's house or my sister's house when they're older with their kids, and let our kids have fun, and we can have fun too. And, the family, I like the family bond of our culture so much.
Right.
That I want to keep, I want it to be better. I want it to be more open. I want our community to be more open to challenge each other's boundaries with our family, with our friends. But I also want to feel like I have a place here even when I'm challenging it. I still want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I see. I feel like I'm backtracking a little bit, but you did say boundaries with family, and you brought religion into it. And I did have not insight.
Ooh, I'm ready for some insight.
It's not an insight.
Desi thoughts. Desi bits.
So Andrew and I got married in October, and when we moved in together, that's when we were deciding, how we celebrate things. I love Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
I cosplay as well, so as you can see, I get to bring out the good stuff, I also love giving out candy, but Andrew doesn't really like celebrating it. So that was more of a boundary for each other. I told him, I want to celebrate it, but you don't have to. So if you want to stay upstairs the whole time, or if you don't want to give out candy, or you just don't want to do anything, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
But
because there is a lot of religions that don't believe in the symbolism of Halloween.
Right.
And I can understand that as well. Like, I know that there's even people in my own family who don't, or they will celebrate it, but they won't do the whole decorating your house and going out trick-or-treating. Maybe they'll put a little pumpkin somewhere.
I don't even think we decorated. Did we decorate? No, we only just the wreath, right?
Yeah, the wreath. Yeah.
I did a Scream wreath, by the way.
It was really cute.
Ghostface, love that guy.
It was amazing.
That was really the only decorations. We did have a little get together, only because it was more so just my mom and my tia that has a child, so they could go trick-or-treating. But Andrew was okay with it. I told him, at any point, if you don't want to do it, just tell me. I don't want to sound mean, shun you upstairs, but
yeah, I think just checking in with each other as you're wanting to be respectful. For me, there's always been a weirdness when people pray around me before they eat. I don't know if anyone else has that thing, because I don't do it. So then I want to be so my compromise with that is, if I see that that's what's happening, I won't eat out of respect for them, so they can have their space to pray privately, and I'll wait until they're done before I start eating, just as a sign of respect. But I also have family arrangements where they're we're all going to pray before we eat. And they start making you grab hands and looking at you.
That makes sense, because in our little intermediate family, whoever eats first is the one that prays first.
I was punished once that way.
But I remember Mary had to pray. She was like, are we going to hold hands? And we were all what?
I was so confused. I was okay, fine, let's do this. And I put my hands up and no one grabbed my hand. Not even my husband.
I just want to let y'all know we awkwardly all held hands. Because that's not my religion. But look at that. We still did it.
I also really like the whole hand holding thing. For me, it's the touch leads to the sense of like love and community. Mm-hmm. And so I really like holding hands when we pray. And I think that we're getting away from that, I think, because of the whole COVID thing. And I miss it.
Do you want to start? I will make everyone hold hands next
time. When we have to pray, yes. Because I think it adds to the experience and it brings the family in. It to be like, I think that when you're engaging somebody with something, it should be with multiple senses. And I think that the touch sense is very important.
I agree. Oh, I forgot to add, I'm sorry. I'm backtracking again to Halloween. When I got married in October, my grandma, my mom's mom, she doesn't live here.
Vegas, baby.
Yeah, she lives in Vegas. I just want y'all to know I always have a place to stay there.
Me too.
We always have a place to stay there. Hold on. But she was here for the whole month, so we got to celebrate Day of the Dead together. I'm not going to say it in Spanish because I always butcher it the first time. I have to say it the second time, and it's right. And I don't want to be made fun of, okay?
Okay, yeah, that's another thing, culturally speaking. If you don't know how to speak Spanish, you will never live it down.
Yeah, I would like that boundary to be set because I want to learn Spanish, but people make fun of me.
Just correct the way we're saying it. Like, don't laugh until you're like rolling around on the floor and then be like, you're an idiot. This is how you say it.
Yeah, like, can we laugh about it together after you tell me?
Yeah, after the problem has been addressed, then we will laugh. That's a rule. We'll put that on the board.
I like how we're just like bringing that in there.
The Mexican life board. We're going to put it on there. How to be a good Mexican American.
Oh my gosh. But we celebrated it with her. I don't think Andrew was really into it. But his way of making a boundary was, I don't really want to be home. And when I do come home, I'll celebrate it with you. But so we met in tennis, and he still plays tennis. So he went to go play tennis until like maybe 8 or 9 o'clock. And we just finished Coco, so we were all crying. But he came in and he did everything that my grandma wanted him to do. And that's another thing I'm really appreciative that my grandma is super Catholic, my mom's mom. And Andrew will make compromises with her. Again, he did that at the wedding too. We didn't do a rosary, like the unity band, but we did some type of
the
unity
lasso.
Band. Yeah, like we did a lasso instead rather than an actual like big ass rosary. I cussed. I'm so sorry.
I agree with you, like, especially with me with the prayer too. I think it's important to also remember to compromise when you're doing boundaries. Like, you can give a little. It doesn't always have to be such a hard line, but you need to recognize when it needs to be a hard line.
Right.
Because that's a totally different situation. Like, praying, that's a little ask. And I prayed too, maybe not to the same, like in the same pattern or format, but I pray as well. So it's not a huge stretch for me to do this. However, like, maybe if they wanted to meditate before we ate, I would be like, what do I even do? Like, and it's okay for me to say, no, I'm going to sit this out. I'll be in a different room, or like I'll come afterwards. Like, we can find compromises if we're communicating.
And I think as that person that would ask to meditate, I think they should understand that that's just something you don't want to do. And again, that person can just take it ugly.
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to be ugly to them when you're not. I think I'm kind of okay with compromising.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. It's the Latina in me. You know?
I think we're better at compromising once we start validating each other.
I agree. And we are going to talk about that in our next episode, which is episode 3, validating.
So hope to hear from you guys again. And if you have any questions or you want to keep the discussion going, we will have a Reddit feed up, supposedly.
Yes, we will.
We'll link that in the description box as well.
So thank you so much for watching.
I'm Mary.
And I'm Des.
We'll talk to you next week, homies.
Bye.